what are the longer-term potential consequences of this pandemic?
It's a really good question, David, and great to be back with you. First of all, I want to say that we're basically moving into a great divergence, really. North America is going to have a different shape to its recovery than Europe and the Eurozone and Asia. Asia, we're seeing starting to open up already. Just look at what's happening inside China. They're going into a travel week where, 85, 90% of Chinese travelers are going to remain domestic. And that's obviously going to be have a positive impact, obviously, on China's services market. I was on the phone earlier today with a CEO of a travel company saying that, occupancy is very, very high across hotels and so forth. We're seeing that because of the lockdowns, the discipline, the contact tracing apps and so forth, Asian societies are going to have a bit more confidence as they reopen and incrementally could open more to each other in terms of travel and so forth. Largely what we're seeing is that, although obviously some markets are going to take a strong hit, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, but countries like Vietnam and the Philippines are going to continue to see pretty strong growth. Asian markets are pretty well, not necessarily correlated, but have become more and more integrated. And as they reopen, we'll start to see them reinforce each other's recoveries in consumption, trade, and so forth. So generally speaking, one can be, quite optimistic about this region. Again, the numbers are also there, just in terms of the population, the density, and the importance of the services economy, which is rebounding okay.
And Parag, how much of the reemergence will come from China? I know one of the points I took away from your book was we think about Asia as China. Asia is a lot more than China. What does this mean for India? What does it mean for Malaysia? How much of the resurgence will be driven by China specifically?
Well, of course, for just about every country in Asia, China is the largest trading partner, so the Chinese recovery is important. And one of the things that might reinforce it is that the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Agreement was agreed to last year and is being ratified, put into effect. That, according to some estimates, can bring in about $200 to $250 billion in terms of gains in intra-regional trade over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's very important, obviously, Chinese imports. One of the things that China has done, actually, owing to the trade war, so pre-pandemic, is that they were massively lowering tariffs on imports of goods from other Asian countries because they were trying to achieve more of a substitution of the U.S., not just an import substitution in terms of domestic production, which they're also trying to do, but simply buying more and also building goodwill through buying more from other Asian countries. And this has been part of Belt and Road at the same time. So I think that China's recovery is, generally speaking, a positive story for other Asian economies. I'll say one more thing about Belt and Road, which is that over the last couple of years, there's been a huge shift in capital allocation away from that investment that was going to North America, going to Europe. Instead, that money is also being pulled back to the benefit of Asian neighbors in terms of some of the FDI as well. So again, this is why, as a broader Asian region, even though it's not all about China, half the GDP is not China in the broader Asian region, China's revival is probably good news for many of the countries.
Parag, you mentioned trade quite a few times in what you just said. Can we expect trade to be anything like what it was before, or is there a possibility, a real possibility, because of this pandemic, and by the way, the chance that it may come back from time to time, that people will really draw up their borders and we'll have less globalization and less trade across borders?
So we'll have, again, a lot more regional integration, right? So again, North America, Europe, and Asia, and the supply chains, are shifting, obviously. So global, far-flung supply chains for energy, manufacturing, and some of the key strategic areas like pharmaceuticals, are going to obviously nearshore to some degree. But nearshoring in the North American context, in light of USMCA, could just as well mean Mexico. In the same way that within Asia, China is pulling back from its investments into, Japan is pulling back from some of its investments into China. But Southeast Asia is the primary beneficiary of that. And it has been for the last 10 years because of the wage differential, fast-growing markets, the ways in which they've been reforming, and because they're part of global trade agreements. So supply chains operate in very kind of complex ways. But I do see that, again, because intra-regional trade is very strong, I would say that we have overestimated the extent to which Asian economies depend on those finished goods being exported to North America and to Europe. That obviously matters considerably, but the volume of consumption and intra-regional trade and consumption has been very, very strong. So again, there is this great divergence going on, this kind of global decoupling along three different avenues. And Asia can probably be more self-sufficient than we tend to think. And the more that it keeps its supply chains, in the region and sells to itself, the better off it is.